I think that this was an incredibly fortunate England.
And at that moment, I said to myself, I need to prepare more for penalties because I wasn't prepared. I'm going to take a bet that he's not on the World Cup roster.
Ooh, really? Hot take. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show will be talking, well, the Euro final wrap-up, Messi madness, Muller, Son, Billy Joel, shootout mentality, summers of soccer, plural, Poch's coaching staff, the U.S. men's national team captain, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mossy, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mossy, you're here, but look who's back.
I'm
for
back.
One more time this summer, at least live.
Save the best for last.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Carli Lloyd, the great Carli Lloyd, joining us again as we just come off minutes ago finishing the Women's Euro final. So welcome back, Carli. Thank you for being here. Mossy, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing well. I think our swords have crossed again.
What happened?
Did you mention Billy Joel in the opening?
I did. So have you watched or seen anything? I'll get to that in a second. Mossy, we'll start with you because I know Carli has come prepared because she's done the State of the Union so many times now. She said, I'm not going to show up without anything. She's got something, but I'm going to hold off here. It's a little tease. Go for it, Mossy.
Well, I, like you, watched this two-part HBO documentary on Billy Joel, who is one of my favorite musicians. I found it endlessly fascinating, kind of sad at times when he reflected back on his failed marriages and drinking problems and all the rest. But in the end, the music has endured, and that really came across in the documentary.
Carli, what about you? What are you watching or reading or want to let the folks know about?
Well, believe it or not, I have actually had some time in my spare time in between off days and games. Stick with Owen Wilson on Apple.
What is that? I don't even know what it is. What's it about?
Owen Wilson was a former professional golfer.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And he then has the opportunity, well, I don't want to give too much
away,
but he then has the opportunity to mentor another young aspiring talent.
Now,
so it was good.
Speaking of aspiring talent, your husband is an incredible golfer. Now, will he watch it with that kind of critical eye where, well, that's not real or that didn't happen? Or
he did watch it.
Okay.
He liked it. I mean,
liked
it could have been the fact that we didn't really have TV in our Airbnb currently this
Okay.
month. So, but I believe not to bring up your wife, but she said it was kind of cheesy.
Yeah, I think she didn't.
You didn't watch it?
I
No.
definitely didn't watch
I mean, it was like a feel good, throw it on 35, 40 minutes of something to watch. And,
Okay. I have two things. And speaking of golf, Happy Gilmore 2, which is out.
Oh.
It's avoidable.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, it wasn't good. There's a lot of throwback stuff, and so you kind of have to watch the first movie. I rewatched the first one with my kids. It was the first time that they ever seen it, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, it's okay." And you kind of had to be there, and maybe in this case, it should have been left there. Now, I did watch the Billy Joel because the second of the two episodes finally dropped, and you know that I only want to be able to binge. I'm not going to give any time to the man if I have to wait around, and I like you enjoyed it. It goes in deep, and I love as they progress through his albums and his life. And I think, the fact that they have his ex-wives and his ex-girlfriends and everybody kind of talking and willing to talk about him gives some layers to him. And he's certainly not a perfect human being by any stretch of the imagination. But I think his history and legacy is assured. But I think there's a coming to the truth of this is one of the great American songwriters. I will say this, if I have a beef with it, there were times where they stressed how little money he had and the dire circumstances that he was in. And then in the next breath, he's flying across country and recording stuff and doing all this stuff that I think takes money. So I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with it, but there was a little disconnect there in terms of where he was getting his money.
His financial
where can I watch
situation, it's on HBO Max.
Yes.
You can watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, after his manager, Frank Weber, famously ripped him off, trying to understand just how much money he lost, how much money he had at the time, how much he was able to recuperate. It's a bit complicated. So I agree with you. That
definitely
was a
got
bit
taken.
murky.
But his money problems are basically a documentary in and of itself.
And we're not going to do this today because we have Carli here, but one of these days I do want to discuss with you his relationship with critics, because I find it fascinating which artists in the 70s were considered serious musicians and which were considered cheesy commercial artists,
that's
and
insane.
why he got put in a category that I don't quite understand.
Insane. He is up there with any of those artists that the elitists and snobs out there are going to throw. But yeah, you should watch it. Keep in mind,
I'm going to check it out.
2 episodes. They are both 2.5 hours long. So this is a absolute deep dive into Billy Joel.
Harper's Nap.
Exactly. Kind of like Tom Petty did a few years ago when they came out with his documentary, which was really, really good too. All right, should we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where should we start?
We just witnessed a dramatic women's Euros final in Basel. Defending champions England faced World Cup holder Spain. Spain took the lead in the first half through Mariona Caldente. England equalized in the second half thanks to Alicia Russo. It was 1-1 after 90, 1-1 after 120. We go to the shootout. In the shootout, Bonmati and Caldente were denied by Hannah Hampton, and Paraluelo sent her attempt wide. England did miss twice as well, Beth Mead and Leah Williamson, but they prevailed. Chloe Kelly converted the winner, so England repeat as Euros champions, and Spain are denied.
Carli,
Yeah.
thoughts on this? We had a little bit of a back and forth before the game. You called them I called them lucky. I'm talking about England. You said you make your own luck, but I can certainly understand that. But let's be honest. I mean, if not for a very kind penalty call, and then, by the way, missed penalties and all sorts of stuff, and yes, you got to make your own luck. But I think that this was an incredibly fortunate England, not just to get to the final, but even to win the final, even after having watched that however many minutes, 120 minutes.
There's something about luck. I don't like the term luck, and that's why I said you create your own luck and you have the opportunities that come your way and you capitalize them and you use them to your advantage. And I think England did that. I think we all thought that England would perhaps get to the final. I think everybody was, in my case, I was thinking Spain was going to win it from the beginning. Even today, I thought Spain was going to win it. You look at the first half, Spain looked like they were going to win it, but it was a tale of two halves. But I think, this England squad, we talk about mentality and the resiliency and the adversity that they have gone through. It was every step of the way they were going through something. So I thought it was, great for viewers, great for fans, kind of lulled you to sleep in the beginning with how beautiful Spain was playing and knocking it around and England was chasing. But look, they got it done, and that's all that matters.
They did. And as I said time and time again, they went to the well time and time again, and they found something in it each and every time. And, usually it's Murphy's Law, right? At some point, you're going to go, and usually at the worst possible time. And yet, I use the analogy of a gambler who starts to double down and people start to crowd around and it gets more and more pressure. And then we all know the house wins unless it's that one moment where the house doesn't win. And that was exactly what Serena Wegman and company were able to do. They bend but did not break. They found a way to get to a point where they could win. Anybody watching the game in terms of the possession, certainly in terms of the way that they played, recognized that there were moments where England couldn't even get out of their own end, couldn't even get the ball, and it was really problematic. But they have the mental fortitude, and yes, I guess the history through this tournament to recognize that it might not be pretty, but we're going to find a way.
That house always wins. That's a George Clooney speech from Ocean's 11, correct?
Is it? The house always wins? I mean, it's a truism that everybody knows when they're going to Vegas or any place else to gamble.
But just to put some numbers on what you said, across their 3 knockout matches, England led for less than 5 minutes. It was just after that Chloe Kelly put back off her missed penalty against Italy and whatever the remainder was of that extra time that they led across the 3 games. But like Carli, I don't see it as luck. I think it's mental toughness. I'm enamored of Serena Wigman. I think she's an incredible manager, and she's instilled something in them, and she pushes all the right buttons as far as substitutions. She started Lauren James probably knowing that she wasn't that fit and might have to come off, but I don't think she wanted to burn one of our weapons off the bench from the start. So she saves players that she knows can make a difference if they come on later in the game. And again, Chloe Kelly provided the assist for Alicia Russo and then obviously converts in the shootout. I mentioned Beth Mead missed. It's interesting because we all watched that Champions League round of 16 match this past season between Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, Julian Alvarez, the double touch.
Yeah.
And in that case, the penalty got wiped away completely, which everybody at the time thought, boy, that's harsh. Maybe we need to revisit that rule. And so they changed it where if you're caught with a double touch, you at least get to retake it. And it came into play. Now, Mead ended up missing the second time around, but you're shaking your head.
You shouldn't get to retake it. If you double touch, if you don't have the proper footwear, if you don't step up and execute properly, then
what if it's a field issue, though? I mean, you know.
Well, if it's raining, it's a field issue. Everything's a field issue then. The other people were able to take it. They were able to make their penalties. No, you should not. You should definitely not get to retake it. But that's the rule. And it was obvious immediately that was going to be a problem. I will say, when it comes to penalties, I don't think I've ever seen a tournament with worse penalties.
They're horrible.
Just in general, absolutely horrible. This is a situation where I don't know what it's 79% or 80% of the time you score, and yet on a consistent basis, not just individual misses, but multiple misses one after the other. And again, we saw it here today.
But the game has evolved, right? So the penalties, I think players are trying to be a bit more deceptive, and they've got the slower run up, the pauses, all of that. But I don't know. I'm not enjoying that in the men's game, and I feel like the women's game is kind of trending a little bit in that direction. I'm like,
the
get
Chloe
up,
Kelly bunny hop or the pony
pick
hop,
your
whatever
spot,
that is.
you know, go confidently in there, do your routine, and just slam it home.
Mossy, I want to get your thoughts on this because in the pregame, Carli and Ari and myself and Stu Holden were talking about this renaissance from when it comes to Spain, and everything that they touch seems to turn to goal. And I know they lost today, but I'm not worried about Spain in terms of the way they play. Miguel Delaney had an interesting article and link to an article today about how this kind of started back in the 90s, and it doesn't matter. Boys, girls, men, women, everybody accepted that this is how we're going to play. This is the right way to play the game. And from an early age, they have been focused and almost exclusive and exclusionary in the way that they have gone about focusing that this is our ideology. This is what we believe is not just the way to play, but the right way to play and what's going to lead us to success. And certainly the proof is in the consistent success that they've been able to have.
Yeah, Miguel Delaney traced it all the way back to the 90s, and there are different points where you could see it starting to come to fruition. I remember in 2003, Brazil beat Spain 1-0 in the final of both the under-20 and under-17 men's World Cups. But both games were smash and grabs in which Spain had more possession and created more chances. And I remember watching both those matches and thinking, there's something happening here with Spain. And a lot of the players, Iniesta, Fabregas, were on those teams. And yeah, it all came together for them at Euro 2008 under Luis Aragonés, which they won. Then they won the 2010 World Cup, 2012 Euros again. And we've seen it obviously on the women's side. They won the World Cup 2 years ago. They get to this Euros final. And it's amazing. It's, we talk about how this word identity is thrown around and most of the time doesn't really mean anything. But this is the rare nation that has a true identity and how they play the game. It crosses over genders, men's, women's, club, country. There's just, when you think of Spanish football, there's something that you associate. And yeah, we had the graphic today of everything they've won the last few years. It's remarkable. So I continue to say, despite what happened today, they are the preeminent footballing nation on the planet right now. I do think, I said this in our last pod, England is second because what they've been able to achieve on the men's and women's side, club and country in recent years is no joke either.
Absolutely. Carli, at one point you leaned over today and we were talking about where the U.S., who was obviously watching this from the outside, and again, it's a regional tournament, so obviously the U.S. looms large. When you see what England is, as Mossy said, what Spain is, and others, where do you put the U.S. right now? And is there any part of you that fears the progress and the speed of the progress and evolution of Europe when it comes to these teams, when it comes to these leagues, and just when it comes to them putting more resources in as to possibly catching and passing the U.S. when it comes to national team or when it comes to NWSL or just women's soccer in general?
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting debate. And after watching this tournament, even teams like Switzerland, Italy, Italy, you could argue that they had a little bit of an easier path to get to the semifinal, but they still came out brave. They were tactically flexible. They played, I thought they played really, really well. And so, yeah, it kind of got my wheels turning a bit to think about our current U.S. women's national team, where they're at right now. I know that they had just won the Olympics. I still think they're hovering currently right now third or fourth behind Spain, England. You could throw in Sweden in there, I believe. I mean, Germany down 10 men. Their epic performance was pretty amazing. But I do still think that there's a bit to go. There's a bit more to prove to me. What they have as far as the depth. And I know Emma's spending a lot of time getting a lot of different players minutes and caps and doing all that to build to 2027. But Europe is in a really, really good position right now. I mean, Spain is undeniably the best. I think they are light years ahead as far as a playing style. You talked about kind of being ruthless in front of the goal. They needed that today. Pariuela had 3 or 4 opportunities and didn't capitalize. So I still think that there is a bit more. So yeah, I think they're hovering around there.
Am I crazy in thinking that as good as Spain are, there's still a little bit of a mental fragility there, that when things don't go their way, you started seeing bad decisions in the final third from players that you're accustomed to always picking out the right ball. But then when the pressure got turned up, all of a sudden Bonmati was rushing some of her decisions and taking ill-advised shots. So is there something there that when you're a team that's so accustomed to being in rhythm and everything going right, all of a sudden when the opponent can muck up the game a little bit, that kind of knocks you off your stride?
Well, yeah, I talked about it. I believe the Germany match, as far as in between the ears, can they fight through adversity when maybe they're not able to have the ball all the time? I think you saw them frustrated against Switzerland a bit. You saw them frustrated against Germany. And so, for me, that's the biggest question mark.
I also wonder about coaching with them. England has Serena Vigman. The U.S. has Emma Hayes. By the way, I can't wait for the next England-U.S. match where those two go head-to-head. Well, Spain, it's just somebody who the players are willing to tolerate. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like there's that really strong figure in charge. So that could be a bit of an issue if they go up against, we saw it England today, and if they face the U.S. in a big match.
Carli, quick before we move on here, when it comes to penalties and the mentality of penalties, I've said time and time again that it's not a coin toss, it's not a crapshoot. It's a skill and it's an art, and it's to be valued and ignored at your own peril. And as I said today, this tournament has not been great when it comes to penalties. But when you start to put yourself into, Chloe Kelly, for example, after the game, she in her interview mentioned the fact that she had missed her previous penalty. Now, I know she followed it up for a goal, but that's weighing on your mind. So can you take us through a little bit about what your mental process was, or maybe how it evolved over your career?
Well, and she also, to follow that up, she also said she knew she was going to make it. And for me, that's telling when you step up and you're confident in making a penalty. For a number of years, the national team, we always rolled out kind of the first, second, and third penalty taker. Every game, they would put the list up. You would know where you're at. And so for my time on the national team, it was always Abby Wambach, usually is the first one to take it. And so I, suddenly found myself going through the national team, our penalty shootout in 2011 World Cup against Brazil. I was one of the takers. I hadn't been, I'd practiced penalties here and there. We would prepare as a team. It was definitely something that we took pride in. We all made ours at that point. Then we faced Germany, have another shootout, and your mind starts to play some tricks on you. Do you go to the same spot? Yeah. Do you change it up? And at this point, keepers didn't have things written out on their water bottles. At least I didn't think so. So I was in my own head about what I should do, whether I should, change my spot up or not. Well, I think Shannon Box was first. She missed. So then suddenly you start to think, oh boy, she missed. I step up, I miss. I sail mine so far over the bar. Tobin Heath misses. And then Abby eventually made hers, and I'm not sure how else. I can't think of it at the moment. And at that moment, I said to myself, I need to prepare more for penalties because I wasn't prepared. I don't normally take them. So I made a conscious effort, after training sessions to just hit penalties all the time, like 10 a day after training sessions. And then 2015 World Cup, the first knockout round against Colombia. Abby steps up. She takes the penalty. She's on the field. She's the first one that's going to take it. She misses. We get one a few minutes later. She hands me the ball, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I step up. I make it. And then I had to make one in a semifinal against Germany. That was, a really, really crucial moment. And I made that, and I was focused, and it came down to my preparation. And it's such a mind game. And I think, that's the biggest battle. It's not the keeper. It's in between your own ears and what you're thinking, the positive self-talk, your routine and preparation.
Before we kiss off this Euro tournament, incredible attendance, incredible viewership, highest attended women's Euro ever with over 650,000 people attending. Ari Hingst was talking about how she didn't know how this was how Switzerland was going to fare, in particular Switzerland, but they brought it in terms of the organization, obviously the numbers of people in country, people coming in from outside of the country. I think it's another example of women's soccer is not a charity, nor should it be. And that's actually a good thing. It is a business. It is a growing business. And it's not a opportunity for someone to, a virtue signaling exercise or anything like that. There is gold in them, their women's soccer hills. We've seen it here in the United States. We see it here from a TV perspective. The viewership over here, again, for a tournament that doesn't even feature the United States. And I think it gets back to this concept of America wants and expects to watch soccer in the summer. And obviously from a Fox perspective, we have given them over the last decade. It's amazing that we did the Women's World Cup in 2015. It's been a decade of soccer and summers of soccer for Fox each and every time. And it's kind of like a comfort food for people in that they see it, and it doesn't matter whether it's men's or women's. People want to watch people kicking a ball. And thankfully, we've been able to do it on a consistent basis, and I would argue an incredibly high quality of basis. And here's another example here. We still got the women's Copas that continue on, Monsi, so give us a little update on where we are when it comes to that.
So we're at the semifinal stage. Monday night, it'll be Argentina against Colombia, and then Tuesday night, Brazil, Uruguay, both those matches on FS1. And then the final is Saturday. And we've talked about the next World Cup in 2027. That is in Brazil, so a lot of people have an eye on Brazil and curious about their preparations in the run-up to that tournament.
All right. Where should we go to now?
We transitioned to Major League Soccer. We had a full slate of games yesterday, including Inter Miami hosting Cincinnati. It finished 0-0, but that match obviously overshadowed by who was not on the field, Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba. They were both suspended because they missed the All-Star game without having any discernible injury. This was the big story in American soccer the last few days. I know you've been going back and forth with people on social media.
It's just really interesting and fascinating in the way that it has been handled and the reaction to it. And we all have either been involved or grown up watching all-star games and the phenomenon of an all-star game when it comes to multiple sports. It's very normal for us. I recognize that around the world it's not necessarily a normal thing. Although I will tell you, in December of 1993, I wasn't even yet playing over in Italy. I was invited to play in an all-star game in December, in the middle of Serie A. In December, they have a little winter break there, but to play in an all-star game actually at the San Siro. So it can happen. It has happened, but obviously it's not a tradition. When it comes to Messi and this particular all-star game, this is an absolutely avoidable own goal from everybody that was involved, whether it's the league, whether it's Inter Miami, or whether it's Messi himself. But I will say that the framing that is happening right now of Messi as some saint, waging some righteous fight against the perceived evils and ills of MLS and its structure, or even the very concept, like I said, of an MLS All-Star game. That's a little rich and that's a little ridiculous. He signed his contract. He knew that playing in the All-Star game was part of his contract, so he knew the rules. So, Messi, you need to grow up. You need to participate. And if you didn't want to play in the All-Star game, you had the leverage at the moment you were signing your contract, and you should have negotiated for that. But now to say, no, I'm not playing for it, I'm not buying for it. The other thing is, Jorge Mas, who's the owner of Inter Miami, I got a lot of time for Jorge Mas. I love Jorge Mas in that he is exactly what MLS needs, this aspirational type of disruptor, okay? And I know he's going to defend his player and players because Jordi Alba is in the same position. But you can tell he wants to do more. And yeah, he wants the All-Star rule changed. And, he called, he said that this was a big, big problem. But he wants to do more with his team and with MLS. But I do believe he is being held back, and it's by design. He's just one of the owners. But for all its success in the last 30 years, I think MLS needs to be big, bold. I've said it before. They need to be arrogant in the most positive sense going forward with those moonshots. And I think Jorge Mas is one of the owners that wants to do those types of things. So I get why he's defending Messi right here, but you're an owner. So if you want to change the rules, then you change it yourself and do the other things too. So I can look at it from both sides, and I can be critical of the way that Messi and Inter Miami and MLS have handled it, while also saying, Jorge Mas, I want you to spend the money that you want to spend. I want you to be able to do some of those big, bold things because I think MLS needs it.
Carli, load management has been a big theme in the soccer world this summer. The last time you were here, we talked about Christian Pulisic missing the Gold Cup. Now we have a 38-year-old Messi saying he'd rather not take part in an exhibition game. The Inter Miami owner complained about how quickly MLS returned to action after the All-Star game. Do you have any sympathy? Do you think this is a larger overall issue? Players are playing too many games and they have a right to complain about it? Or I know you weren't thrilled with Pulisic. You kind of roll your eyes at Messi as well, skipping the All-Star game.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think the load management has gotten a bit out of hand, but I also think that the men's game and the women's game, there are a lot more games on the men's side. There's a lot more travel. There's a lot more tournaments. Messi exactly knew that he had to play in this All-Star game and probably said, yeah, I'm not going to play in it. I need rest.
Carli, you ever traveled in a private jet, a PJ?
Only a few times. On my one hand.
Pretty nice, huh?
It's very nice.
Pretty nice.
It's
okay.
very nice.
Do you think Messi is traveling coach or commercial sitting in the middle seat over there in Southwest?
No, definitely not. No.
So,
but what's the solution? Is the solution to move the All-Star game?
Exactly. If the All-Star game is a priority from a business perspective, okay, and it is, it has been.
Yep.
Then you can't make it optional because then players are just not going to play. So if it's a priority, then you're going to have to say, yes, you have to play unless you have an injury. And that's where this could have all been solved. You just said Messi had an injury, or he gets on his private jet, he shows up, he waves to everybody, plays for 15 minutes, and then gets off the field. And if you don't like the fact, if you're Jorge Mas or anybody else, if you don't like the fact that there's an All-Star game, you're an owner. Now, what's the solution? You want to play less regular season games? Oh, hold on. I don't want to play any less regular season games. So everyone screams and yells about the games, but nobody, when it comes to ownership or when it comes to the league, wants to take away those. Because when you take away those games, you have less revenue. And less revenue means you're paying the players less. So, hey, players, do you want to make less money? We'll play fewer games and you'll make less money. Well, that's not going to happen. So, I don't know how
when was the All-Star game? What day was the All-Star game?
All-Star game is this Wednesday. So we are recording here on Sunday. The All-Star game was on Wednesday. Now, there were teams that had the actual All-Star game was Wednesday night.
But then their next game was how many?
So their next game was Saturday, was yesterday, all right? There were games on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And look, I get it, 2 days later having a game after the All-Star game. It's tough, yeah, but again, it's not like the All-Star game is exerting. It's not like you're fatigued after an All-Star game. I played in plenty of All-Star games. It's a boondoggle, all right?
And how many players go to the All-Star? How many on each side?
I don't know actually how many it
because
is.
then you could say
and this
go
was
on for
against
10
All-Stars
minutes.
from Liga MX.
Yeah, like go on for 10 minutes here and there. But as a player, we don't have this on the women's side. I'm usually in agreement with you, but to have a midweek game and then to have an actual season game, I'm kind of like, it's
Lex, I don't want to blow past this. When you were asked if you've ever been on a private jet, you answered only a few times.
It's incredible.
Yeah, hey, it makes travel a lot easy. Although,
yeah, we did an experiment the other day where if you just had as much money as you possibly could have, right? You were a billionaire or whatever. What's the first thing that you would change? And so a lot of people will say, yeah, private jet flying over. A lot of people will say private chef. You know, people will do any number of things. And look, if you can just get up, get into your private plane, and go wherever you want, it's all on your time schedule. You don't have to deal with all of the crap that we all deal with when we are actually traveling. Yeah, that makes life a whole lot easier. And I suppose it's all relative. I suppose if you're Messi, well, it's this jet and it's not this jet, but it's actually getting on the jet and not being my family. Cry me a river.
A couple things on this. I agree with you. After Inter Miami's last game before the All-Star break, they could have just said Messi's suffering from a muscle injury. He skips the All-Star game. They claim he's a game-time decision against Cincinnati yesterday, and then he plays. And we all would have rolled our eyes and been skeptical about whether he was really injured, but you couldn't have said anything, and he would have been fine. But I think the reason they didn't do that is Jorge Mas wanted this fight because, to your point, he's a disruptor, so he likes having this platform to rail against the league.
Proving a point.
Yeah, from an MLS perspective, though, it's fascinating because from the moment Messi arrived, there's been this delicate balance. You know he's a special player who's going to get special treatment, but you don't want it to cross a line where it becomes farcical. And for whatever reason, they sat on this for a couple of days. They kind of read the room. They must have been getting calls from other owners about it, and they decided this one was they had to draw a line. And Jorge Mas came out and said, "Oh, I hope this doesn't upset Messi to the point where he doesn't resign and he leaves," which was an interesting threat to throw out there.
Well,
but
if Messi takes his ball and goes home because of the All-Star game, then
but from an MLS perspective, did you find it interesting? Did you honestly think they were going to go this route? Which way did you think the coin was going to fall?
Oh, no, I thought that they were going to make special dispensation
exactly.
and whatever and do it. So in a certain sense, the power pendulum, MLS said, we have to make a stand here. And I would hope, even though this was incredibly mismanaged from the start, that they got in touch with Jorge Mas and there was a discussion, and Jorge said, all right, but you understand that I'm going to have to call a press conference. And he did, and he railed against the situation. But he just kind of needed to vent and get that out and at least publicly support his players. And MLS and Don Garber had to say, yeah, we recognize that there's flexibility. We recognize that Messi is Messi and not everybody is treated equal. But in this case, it's a bridge too far for us to say no and give special dispensation. And yet we'd have had to give it to Jordi Alba also. So,
Well, he gets more rest.
Exactly. That's the thing. Messi has another. If he's really so tired that he was able to miss the game this weekend. I know he was on site, by the way, showing his pink watch and his canteen or whatever he's selling and all that kind of stuff. And he's going to be just fine. So now he's all rested up.
So a few miscellaneous notes. Messi was at the game sitting alongside Inter Miami's newest signing, Rodrigo de Paul, his Argentina teammate. Remember, 2 years ago, Messi led Inter Miami to the Leagues Cup crown. Columbus won that competition last year, and another edition of that tournament begins this week. So we have that to look forward to as well. We also, as we mentioned, we resumed MLS action this past weekend. On Friday, San Diego beat Nashville 1-0 on a goal by Chucky Lozano. They're atop the West. Inter Miami and Cincinnati did finish 0-0. Cincinnati 1 point back of Philadelphia, topped the East. So the MLS season continuing to percolate. And then the transfer mill still churning. A couple of big names who could be headed to MLS. Thomas Muller is evidently in negotiations with Vancouver. He has intimated that his next move will be to MLS. And LAFC are interested in Heung-min Son, who might be a replacement for Denny Bouanga, who is being linked to America in Mexico right now.
Ooh. Well, the Thomas Muller thing is interesting. Excuse me. Is interesting because, here's a player that seemed ageless. And so I still think he has a little bit in the tank. Vancouver's interesting for him to, of all the places to go, for him to pick Vancouver. Wonderful, wonderful city. And I'm certain that
maybe he loves oysters.
Maybe he loves oysters. Exactly. Who knows? Maybe he just loves Canada and something like that. I'm here for that. The Son thing would be interesting to LAFC. I was at the Galaxy when Hong Yong-min, a South Korean legend, came and played for the Galaxy. Just because you have a player from a certain country doesn't mean that every Korean American is going to show up. I get it that they're whether it's a Mexican player for the Mexican American community, and the list goes on and on and on and on. The Son thing is interesting because I think from a playing perspective, obviously he's incredibly gifted and talented and has proven that for a number of years. And it almost kind of plays into, because he is a big star and someone I think that not only from the Korean American community, but I just think soccer players and soccer fans in general recognize that, hey, this is somebody that I would want to go see, whether it's for LAFC or anybody else. And I think LAFC could certainly use him.
Carly, I know you're a Sixers and an Eagles fan, correct?
Yes.
Does that carry over to MLS, Philadelphia Union?
It does, yeah.
They're having a great season.
They're having a great
You spent a lot of time
season.
down there in Chester?
I've played at Chester many times. Yeah, I mean, it's a great stadium.
From a location perspective,
No,
would have
it's
been
great.
interesting, and it will be interesting in the future if and when Philadelphia, if they were to have,
their MLS stadium up where all the other stadiums are in that.
It would be amazing, and I do think that there is the opportunity for that in the future. There should be the opportunity. I mean, there's nothing like Philly fans. It's pretty amazing.
Anything else, Mossy?
That is it.
That's it. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. Keep in mind, you can use that hashtag AskAlexi, and our handle out there on the old social media platforms is SOTU with Alexi, or you can call into our State of the Union podcast voice mailbox, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. What do we got today, Mossy?
A couple of questions on X. First up, Casey Wizard wants to know who will captain the U.S. men's national team at the 2026 World Cup. The options he offered up are Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, or Gio Reyna.
Well, Gio Reyna, first off, has to come back to actually play with the U.S.
I
national
don't
team.
know if he's captain material.
I'm going to take a bet that he's not on the World Cup roster.
Ooh, really? Hot take. Hot take, Carli.
Yeah.
So he does not find a way back into the good graces of Pochettino and this national team.
No.
So he just moved to Parma, right, Mossy, down there? And we'll see if that goes well. But, yeah, I don't think that's as crazy a take as it may seem. But, given how much potential he has had and how much we've talked about him. But when it comes to this actual question, thank you, by the way, Casey Wizard over there. I think when we mentioned the fact, Christian Pulisic wasn't even there this summer, but while Tyler Adams was there, he was not the Tyler Adams of the past. And if he's not, I think that's a problem from a starting perspective. And therefore, I think it would be a problem from a captain's perspective, because he's like a kind of logical choice. You take a little of the pressure off of Pulisic. Speaking of not being in good graces, I'm not sure right now the relationship between Poch and Pulisic. He's going to be there and he's going to play and all that. But from a captain's perspective, I would still think that it was going to be Tyler Adams if he is on the field and if he is the Tyler Adams of old. If not, then I would probably say, and we can scream and yell about it, but the reality is that Tim Ream is going to be a starter unless somebody comes along here in the next 300 and however many days that are left here. And if he's on the field, I could absolutely see Tim Ream being the not just because he's old, but because he's experienced, and I think he's there to bring that wisdom, being the captain.
Carli, how important is it selecting the right captain for these major tournaments?
I think it's a big part of it. I also think that there's players that lead by example. So just because you have the band doesn't mean that there's no other leaders that can necessarily step up. But the captain takes on a little bit more media. Has to navigate different things that may arise. But I'm going with you, Lex. I would think Tim Ream would get it.
The captaincy, it is important, but it's an ego play for the most part, in that people will say, yeah, they're all captains and they're all leaders. And yeah, they are. But the visual representation of you being selected out of all of these players, it matters. It matters to players. Don't ever let them tell you that it doesn't. There are some where the captaincy is a burden, it is a weight, and you really have to be, as a coach, I think, aware of if and when that happens. But even in that case, taking it away from a player for their own good and trying to explain to them that this is actually going to help you, that's not as easy as it sounds.
So you think the players, it's their ego?
Oh yeah, I think I at least the experiences that I've had, players want to be captain. Now they might say, "Well, we're all captain, we're all leader. It doesn't matter." But there is something, again, the visual representation, walking on that field with that on your arm, sets you apart from others. And I think it plays to an ego.
I played high school varsity soccer, and we voted on captains at the start of the season, and the coach said anybody that votes for Mossy is off the team. He was half joking, but I think half serious.
You're not captain material?
No. The cheeky one here is Chris Richards. We covered a game today in which the two captains were Leah Williamson and Irene Paredes. And if Adams and Ream, for whatever reason, are not on the field next summer, I do think Richards elevated himself in stature this past summer, and just the interviews, he exudes a certain leadership. So he could be an interesting one that could emerge as an option.
All right, what else we got?
Another question on X. Brian Bada asks, many people believe Poch ought to appoint an American coach to his staff. What do you think?
Oof, this is interesting because there is certainly a part of me that says having someone with that type of background and that history and that context and perspective could be incredibly beneficial. But the problem is that would be coming from the outside, in that I want Pochettino to recognize that that would be a good thing. And he might not. And he absolutely might be right. He might just say, no, these are the people that I have. And while I respect the fact that there are others from the outside, that person coming in might mess up the dynamic that I have. That could happen. But, when I think of a Jim Curtin or a Peter Vermes kind of out there, by the way, two guys that are doing nothing right now, I think that would be an addition that would be positive going forward. And I think, especially in this case where Pochettino has no experience in the international game, has no experience with American soccer, and is learning on the fly. And he's been actually pretty honest about saying, this is amazing that I'm seeing this or this and this, which is all fine and well, but time's a ticking here. And so having somebody that could provide that continual soundboard of this is what we are, this is what we are, these are the realities, whether you like them or not, I think that could help with his navigation going forward. Carli, what do you think? Whether it's Pochettino or anybody, when it comes to coaching the national team, how important is having an American voice and figure as part of that staff?
I do think it's important. Speaking from experience, our coach, Pia Sunhaga, we had Hege Rise as assistant coach, but she brought in some American coaches, whether their role was strictly maybe just working with the forwards or the defense. We had Erica Walsh come in at one point. Jill Ellis was always kind of in the mix. So I do think that it's important. I think that from a cultural standpoint, from just the communication, knowing kind of the ropes of how American soccer is. So I do think that it could probably be an added benefit. And like you said, there's not a lot of time. So maybe that can be helpful.
It's also what it represents and the message. Because if you're an American team made up of American players, you might look at a foreign coach. And while you might have incredible respect and recognize what he or she can impart to you, there's also you don't have anybody here that's American. Is that because you don't think anybody's good enough? And I think that would, at least from a personal perspective, the way I would look at it, I'd be like, well, we have plenty of good coaches and we have plenty of good people out there that have good thoughts. I'm not saying to be the head coach, but that you are completely Americanless in your staff, that might bend me the wrong way when I'm thinking about what's going on, because you have no respect ultimately for who we are. And maybe I would, get into my mind thinking about that. Mossy?
If I was Pochettino, I would add Greg Berhalter to his staff.
That would be good. Come full circle. Anything else, Mossy?
That is it.
All right, let's take another quick break and we'll wrap it up here when it comes to the State of Union with my one for the week. All right, by the sight and sound, the sound of the van, it's the end of our show. And at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. And, it's basically a wrap-up of yet another summer of soccer. I briefly mentioned it earlier in the show that these summer of soccers are becoming something that American soccer fans, American sports fans, and I guess even Americans for that matter, have come to expect. And it's an incredible responsibility that we have taken on. When I say we, I mean here at Fox Sports for the last decade. And, sitting here with Carli Lloyd, who in the summer of 2015, she was still running around and scoring great goals and winning World Cups. And now she's a colleague with us. But I showed up in January of 2015. And the first tournament that we did was that Summer World Cup up there in Canada. And what a wonderful experience it was. But, again, I go back to the fact that I think part of our, like I said, responsibility is to provide the steady diet through the summer. And so that when people get up and they turn on their television or turn on their computer, the sight of men and women kicking a ball brings them in. And as I mentioned earlier, it's that type of comfort food. And so we finish yet another tournament here. We got another one going on with the the women's Copa America that's going to be wrapping up too. I like to think, and I hope that you agree, that we provide that to folks in a good way. This is still a work in progress, but with 300 and some days until the World Cup, obviously the size of the World Cup next summer is going to require us to do things in a much bigger way. And I think we are prepared and ready to do it because of this history that we have. And I love the fact that there are people that maybe aren't even soccer fans out there that get caught up in these tournaments. And, you know, Mossy, we've worked this, I don't know how many tournaments we've worked, but there's always the initial stories and the storylines and the narratives that we lay out. And we recognize it's not linear. It goes up, it goes down, it goes different directions, things we can predict, things we can't predict. But the men and women that we have in front of the camera, the men and women that we have behind the camera are constantly trying to figure out how to tell that story in the best possible way and to bring as many people into the tent as possible. And as we said time and time again, that tent is going to be massive next summer, and the potential for a massive amount of people to come in and be welcomed in is going to be on offer. And we have to make sure that we are ready to do that. And I think that we will be. So anyway, this is a little bit of nostalgia. This is a little bit of being incredibly proud of everything that's happened, creating these summers of soccer. And while I'm talking about it from a Fox perspective, it should be said that, you know, whether it's the Club World Cup this summer, summers in the United States from a viewing perspective, either on television or actually going to the game, have often and will continue to be chock full of soccer opportunities. And whether it's Fox or anybody else, you want to make sure that you are bringing those stories to life, introducing people to not just the game, but to the people within the game, the teams that we have, the characters, the personalities, and like I said, all of those stories. I think we have done it well yet again this summer. You're never going to please everybody. And as I said, this is a work in progress. So whether it's individually or collectively, we can always get better. But the people that I work with, as I said, on camera, or whether it's Carli or anybody else, Ari, and the list goes on and on and on. Some of these people I've worked with since 2015. Some of them have just come into the TV space and are learning. We have people behind the camera. It takes a village, by the way, to make me look even halfway presentable to America. And we get bigger and better with each and every summer. I will finish it by saying, speaking of people behind the camera, this guy here who now we've worked, 8 years together when it comes to the State of the Union, I'm talking about David Mossy, is an incredibly valuable asset that we have here at Fox and that anybody would be proud and privileged to have in terms of the impact that he has. And while some of you know it, some of you don't, and even sometimes those of you know it, you will be watching what is going on and you will see and hear him, whether you realize it or not, how important and impactful he is at this, what I feel is a pretty high level of broadcast in terms of the writing, in terms of the narrative, in terms of the information that often we are just conduits for. So thank you, Mossy, for all of the work that you have already done. The big kahuna is coming next summer. I guarantee you that we will be ready. I guarantee you that you will be ready, but it's only because of all of this experience that we have had that we can even come close to hopefully doing it justice come next summer.
Alexi, you're great too. My mother gets very annoyed if you say nice things about me and I don't return the favor. I will say it was a great summer on the State of the Union pod, some fun guests. We had JP Della Camera on for the first time, Rob Stone, Ari, Carli, Mo, Stu, Landon. And we're going to keep going. We're approaching 600 episodes, I believe. But I'm wondering where, because this studio renovation is taking longer than the Barcelona stadium renovation. Now, I wonder what's going to come first, us in their new studio or Barcelona back at Camp Nou?
Well, look, we have a microphone and we will talk anywhere. I mean, we started with humble beginnings, let's be honest, in the closet over there in Playa. And so now at least we have a studio. We don't know when we'll be back into our digital studios as things are happening, but either way, we will find a way to give you the content that you have come to expect when it comes to the State of the Union. But look, we can talk till we're blue in the face. The reality is if people don't tune in, then it doesn't really matter. And you're tuning in, and we continue to to bring people into that State of the Union tent, and the numbers just keep going up and up and up. Anything before we go?
That's it.
All right, keep reviewing and downloading and subscribing and doing all the different things that you do out there. Keep smashing that button over there on the old YouTube channel, up and down and left and right and double fisting and all that kind of stuff. And whether it's Apple or Spotify or the list goes on and on, wherever you get the State of the Union, we thank you so much for tuning in each and every week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. What is left with it? I will be on the road next week, and so we're going to figure out how to get you, like I said, the content that you need. But just because the summer of soccer is coming to a close certainly doesn't mean that the State of the Union is coming to a close. As a matter of fact, we're only going to ramp it up because, like I said, 300 and whatever, to 60 days or whatever it ends up being before the World Cup. We got a lot of soccer to talk about and a lot of good things to look ahead, both on and off the field, when it comes to soccer in the United States and beyond. And we will be there each and every step of the way. Until next week, my friends, size the day.